Jen Mall, and welcome to Nurse Connect. I am an RN and a board-certified nurse coach. I believe that connecting with others is essential to living a happy and fulfilled life, and that sharing our stories not only helps us to heal ourselves, but also helps others by inspiring hope and optimism. I am so grateful to share stories of these incredible nurses on their journey, and I encourage you to find a way to share yours too. Thanks for listening in. Hey everyone, we'll jump onto this week's podcast in just a moment. But real quick, if you're a nurse coach or a leader and are interested in developing a hospital-based nurse coaching and wellness program, then I would love for you to join me in my Facebook group, Hospital-Based Nurse Coaching and Wellness Programs. In this group, we share best practices and resources, as well as trainings to help you develop a successful program, which will decrease turnover and burnout, as well as increase employee satisfaction. Of course, we know this leads to decreased serious safety events and improved patient experience. I have got a free mini course that I can send you to get started on this journey. I will drop the link below, and I hope to see you inside the group. Have a great day. Bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Nurse Connect podcast. I'm Jen Mall, and I'm so happy to have Katie here. We've been trying to get together for a few months now, so I'm super grateful that you're on with me today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Jen. I'm so excited to be here with you today and so grateful that we have been able to finally make the connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love to just take everybody back to the beginning because I feel like this is a nurse focused podcast. And so like, how did you become a nurse? And we'll kind of go from there.
So that's a really great question, and one that I actually love to answer because my path was not traditional. So I grew up with a mother who was a nurse, an
Okay.
ICU nurse. And of course, as a child, I thought for a long time, oh, this is what I'll do. I'll be a nurse when I grow up. And then the older I got, I was like, yeah, I don't know that that's really the right path for me. So my first degree is in foods and nutrition. I have a bachelor's degree in foods and nutrition, and had some really difficult life circumstances. During that time, I was young. I made some poor choices. I became a single mother during the time that I was working on that degree.
Yeah.
And the really tricky part about that degree is that it requires then that you do an internship after you've completed that. And I had an 18-month-old. I needed a job.
Yeah.
So I never was eligible to sit for the registered dietitian's exam because I did not complete that internship. So I ended up taking an entry-level job at a local hospital in the dietary department. And I actually really loved that job, but it wasn't exactly paying the bills.
Yeah.
So then I found myself in food service management, and that was never the role that I wanted. And very soon after entering that position, I was like, I cannot do this the rest of my life. There's no way I can keep doing this. And so very soon after finishing that degree, I decided to go back and get a 2-year nursing degree.
Good for you. Yeah. I bet that was hard too, because between clinicals and having a toddler and, oh, I can only imagine how challenging that time period in your life was.
Yeah, it was. And it's one of those things that has kind of proven to be a little bit of a challenge for me now as a nurse entrepreneur, because all I knew was work hard and keep going. And there was such a high level of survival for so long, because when I was in nursing school for those 2 years, my son wasn't in kindergarten yet. I did have to do clinical. I did have to do school. I had no support from his father whatsoever. And I was still working 32 hours a week. I was literally doing all the things. So it was always that go, go, go mentality. And I have to work so hard to be successful. And I did. I worked so hard to get A's in nursing school and so hard to keep a roof over our heads. And so it was necessary, and I can have a lot of love and appreciation for that season. But it's required a high level of deconstructing as I into a different realm.
For sure. And I'm sure it's taken you years to even acknowledge that and be ready to process that. So you got through nursing school. What did your initial area of focus was that in nursing?
I wanted to be an ER nurse.
Oh, yeah?
I wanted to be an ER nurse so bad. But then as the time got closer, graduation was getting closer, because I was already working in a hospital. I had been offered the opportunity to just slide into an ER
Perfect.
nursing position. The CNO had conversations with me, and it was like, yes, we can do this. And then I got really scared. I did my last like clinical preceptorship hours in the ER with one of their very skilled ER nurses,
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't know anything. I can't do this.
Mm,
And so I went to the CNO and I was like, maybe I should hang out on med surge for a while instead, which I knew wasn't what I wanted to do, but that's
yeah.
where I ended up. And
Okay.
I did that for a year. I did that for 1 year, and learned very quickly that night shift was not for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really hard job. It was a job where even back then we were often short staffed.
Yeah.
We took care of some pretty high acuity patients on our med surge unit. Um, not titrating any kind of drips, but doing some insulin drips and even
Yeah.
some cardiozen drips on the floor. And sometimes you would have 8 patients.
My gosh. And what area of the country is this?
I am in rural Virginia, so I'm in the south
Okay.
part of
Yeah.
Virginia, in
Yeah.
the right in
Oh,
the heart of
gosh.
Appalachia.
8 patients. So there's no patient ratios then. Are there patient ratios now?
I am not sure what the standard is now. I understand that there has been some parameters put in place, but I have not
Mm,
worked in that environment in so long that
yeah.
I don't know what they end up with. I know
Yeah.
that I believe that my local hospital for some time has capped ratios and
Yeah.
not taken any more patients, but I don't know what that looks like now with
Yeah.
how many hospitals are overrun and how few beds there are available.
Mm.
So I'm not really sure what it is.
Wow. I can't even imagine being a new grad on a high acuity floor and having 8 patients. I mean, how can you even really, man? I mean, it's survival mode. You're just trying to keep them alive.
Yeah. It was survival. It was not a lot of deep caring
Hmm.
relationships with
Yeah.
patients. I have always credited that year with being an invaluable lesson for me. Like I
Hmm.
learned things in
I
that
bet.
role that I never would have learned anywhere else. So I do appreciate that time.
Yeah.
And thankfully it's a distant memory.
Yes. Yes. So you said you gave that a year. Your heart wasn't there. Your night shift was rough. What was next for you?
So at that point, I had been in that role right at a year when a former coworker of my mom's, actually, who worked in ICU with my mom, and she was the director of the OR
Yeah.
and patient surgery department and an extended care unit, like a skilled unit within the hospital that
Hmm.
is right across, like next town over from me.
Cool.
And she had a position open, and it was going to be kind of a float position, but it was going to be like taking care of inpatient surgery patients,
Cool.
also orienting to same day surgery, but then also orienting to that skilled unit where we back then, we rehabbed total joint patients for 14 days
Yes,
minimum.
this is so crazy. They're in and out in a day now.
Oh, they're still on the same day. So
Yeah.
I would work a day a week in that rehab unit,
Okay.
and I would do inpatient. I filled in on outpatient surgery.
Cool.
So that was where I landed. My favorite of all of those was
Yeah.
always same day surgery.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too long after starting there, within a couple of years of starting that job, that I landed in same day surgery full time.
Mm. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. And so is that, were you still working there when you found coaching?
I was still working there when I found coaching. There were a few things that happened in between there.
Uh-huh.
So I did outpatient for a while, and then it was like I've learned all that I can learn here, and it felt like it was time to learn something new. So I actually went
Hmm.
to work in the OR.
Oh, cool.
And so that was a real big learning
I bet.
experience. The thing that got pushed to the forefront there was being in that new environment. It's high stress.
Mm-hmm.
I suffered a lot of years with chronic anxiety and still really work to um, release that and to
Yeah.
live with that some days. And so back then I held myself to a very high standard. I was very afraid of messing up. So
Hmm.
I stressed myself out again, like those patterns of always having been in
Yes.
survival and not knowing how to do it any differently. So as soon as I started working in the OR, within weeks, I had some pain that settled into my upper back,
Mm.
and it was there for 3 solid years.
Oh, wow. Yikes.
So that ultimately led to me having a neck surgery. I did have some herniation of discs in my neck but there was never any definitive cord compression. So it's like, I'm not sure that that was actually like, I don't believe that's the root of my symptoms because they
Mm,
weren't better after the surgery.
mm,
But I was not responding to conservative treatments. So then that was the next step was, okay,
yeah,
have this next surgery. So I had the next surgery in January of 2017, and I was no
yeah.
better.
Mm,
And in fact, got worse from the trauma and the stress of having surgery. And then going back into that OR environment, I was again just high stress. I
mm.
was going to work and I'm like, I can't feel my left arm all the way down to my hand is completely numb
Oh my
because I had so
gosh.
much like muscle contraction in my back. And so at that time, I took some intermittent FMLA, but then ultimately started seeking like a PRN position. And so I stayed PRN in the OR for a little while and then worked about a year and 3 month stint in
Mm-hmm.
radiation oncology at another
Mm-hmm.
facility.
Mm.
Learned very quickly that that was also not the placement for me. And so it came back around full circle when I decided that I was going to let go of the PRN OR job because I was never working, but I was still taking some call. And,
Yeah.
on call in a small rural
In the middle of
hospital,
the night.
we're getting called in for C-sections that
Oh,
need to be done emergently or
yeah.
sometimes urgently, or, on a stat basis. And so that didn't feel safe for anybody because I was never actually getting to work in those rooms anymore.
Yeah.
I was still taking some calls. So I had to make the decision to leave that environment
Right.
altogether. But then there was an opportunity to go back PRN back in my little home of same day surgery where I've always felt like I thrived,
Yeah.
felt like I was a really great same day surgery nurse. And so I PRN'd that for a little bit. And then there was a full-time position that came open again. And so I slid back into that and did
Perfect.
that until I left the bedside full time in April of 2022.
Oh, incredible. Incredible. So, I'm curious if you ever were able to determine why you had that pain.
Yeah. So a few things that actually has been a big factor in what led to me
Mhm.
no longer feeling in alignment in the hospital and feeling like
Mhm.
I needed to do something differently. So
Mm.
I had sought out some alternative therapy when I wasn't better. I started seeing an acupuncturist. I was seeing a massage therapist who then had suggested a naturopathic doctor to me that she had been seeing. I went and saw the naturopathic doctor who then passed me on to integrative medicine because there
Okay.
was some hormone testing that she felt like
Oh,
I
yeah.
and it wasn't something she did.
Okay.
Um, so a couple of the really key factors in finally alleviating my pain were getting treated for underactive thyroid
Mm.
that has never been clinically abnormal, but I was
Really?
classically symptomatic for 18 years before it was ever treated.
Oh.
And some deficiencies like some magnesium.
Mhm.
I had some adrenal fatigue. If
Mm.
you're not producing enough cortisol, you're going to have more inflammation, more pain. So they were things completely unrelated to the
Yeah.
musculoskeletal system
Right.
that were causing me to fear that I was going to be disabled.
Yeah.
It's not going to be able to keep working as a nurse. To make me realize that the surgery I had was not a necessary one.
Mm.
I've told many people before I was never suicidal over the chronic
Yeah.
pain, but if it had continued, I don't know what that ultimately
Yeah,
would
that
have.
hopelessness of
I
just
was
kind of
able
being
to
being.
understand how people with chronic pain
Yeah.
choose not to do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Do you feel that your stress in that role in the OR contributed to that pain?
I do. I do. And I didn't really realize
Mhm.
it at the time. Like I kind of related it to stress,
Mhm.
but again, I was still in such a survival and oh, what can we do to fix it? Like there wasn't a lot
Yes.
really, I guess, good, clear, critical thinking
Mhm.
about it or
Mhm.
an ability to understand it. I did not possess the capability to just be with it. I was
Yeah.
always trying to get away from it.
Yeah.
One saving grace was that I slept during those 3 years that I had all that pain, because I would go to bed with it and I would wake up with it. But it's a
Mm.
very common thing for people to not be able to rest when they have
Yeah.
that kind of discomfort. And at least I
Yeah.
did sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I think, that is the medical model and unfortunately our nursing model is right is that we try to fix things
Mhm.
but not necessarily dig in and figure out that root cause and stress and trapped energy in our bodies, right? It can cause a lot of this pain and physical symptoms. And sometimes it just takes us learning and growing and reaching the right people and making the right connections to finally allow whatever that is, that stress or that trapped energy or whatever that is, to be released. And interestingly enough, I mean, I've had experiences where I've had chronic pain, like in my hip. I've had this eyelid twitching. And once I resolved the underlying issue of the stress, that was gone. So it's been really interesting talk with others that have also struggled with pain and stress related physical symptoms, and to see how they've kind of worked through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I still had all that pain after surgery and I went back to the spine surgeon, his words to me were very clear. He said there's a very emotional component to what you're
Mm,
experiencing. And it's taken me a lot of years to realize, and all of this inner work that I've done
yeah.
since jumping into this specialty of coaching, to realize that he was absolutely right, but he was right for all the wrong reasons. Like
Right.
he was saying in the most polite way possible that I was crazy and that it was all in my head.
Mm,
But there was a very emotional component. There was a lot of
yeah.
unresolved things that I didn't know were at the root of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, so interesting. Okay, so let's talk more about coaching. So how did you find coaching? And you said you've actually left the bedside, gosh, about a year and a half ago at this point. So you've been out
Yeah.
for a while.
I've been out for a while. Well, I had a part-time job. So
Yeah.
I don't even really exactly remember how nurse coaching came into
Yeah.
my awareness. I guess probably scrolling through Facebook and seeing
Yeah.
ads and stuff for certification programs. But after my own experience with the medical system, feeling very betrayed by
Hmm.
it,
Hmm.
feeling like everything I'd ever believed to be true was not really
Mm.
true, um, I started recognizing that we do surgeries without identifying root
Yeah.
causes. And when my life was very shifted and very changed with integrative medicine, it was like, I'm not reaching my fullest potential. I need to do something different. And I
Yeah.
stayed stuck there knowing that for about
Yeah.
5 years
Hmm.
before I took any steps to do something different.
Right.
So, um, I think I found coaching, like I said, just the idea of the specialty of coaching,
Yes.
um, just through the internet. But I just during COVID got really burnt out. During that time, elective surgeries were mostly canceled, but we
Hmm.
ended up doing a lot of monoclonal antibody infusions
Oh, interesting.
on our unit. We did
Yeah.
a lot of those, and it became really burdensome. Just
Mm.
the busyness of it, the pace. We never knew what we were walking into. But when I realized we were doing surgeries without identifying root causes and then compounding it with what COVID was, then for me, because I had done so much work on my health, I had done so much to get away from chronic pain, I had a high level of concern for side effects
Yep.
associated with COVID vaccines, and I didn't know what mandates were going to mean.
Yeah.
And so it finally felt like the push. And during that time, I actually connected with Laura Menard during that time,
Mm.
early in 2021, just about what nurse coaching is and
Yeah.
nurses who are concerned about what's going to happen with mandates. And
Yeah.
so then I somehow ended up coming across a post in August of that year, another nurse coach offering 2 free sessions to nurses seeking
Good.
more clarity. And after my first conversation with her, I chose a program and was signed up.
Beautiful. I just love hearing how I mean my podcast is not only for nurse coaches, but I definitely have connected with a lot of nurse coaches, and everybody has a different path, yet also very intertwined and similar. And I just love hearing how we found the specialty. And I want to get into more about what you're working on now. But it's just such a beautiful specialty of nursing, and I think it's still fairly, not people don't really know a lot about it, so they're kind of like, I don't know, but it just feels so aligned, I think, with why we got into nursing. And unfortunately, in most cases, we're pulled away from the why we wanted to become nurses. And so that I feel like nurse coaching kind of brings us back to that. And it's just so beautiful to see the work people are doing and the lives we're impacting. And it's beautiful. Mm. So share with me more about your coaching. What do you work on?
Yeah.
What do you focus on?
So I really thought that my focus would be that integrative
Mm-hmm.
sort of functional medicine,
Yeah.
nutrition, and lifestyle
Yeah.
medicine. That's just not the direction that it ended up going.
Interesting.
Or conversations I had,
Yeah.
I've always recognized myself as an introvert and not somebody that really
Mm.
did. I kept things very surface level with people, but then the
Yeah.
more I talked with people, the more that people shared like deep personal stories
Mm.
with me. I was developing relationships with
Yeah.
people, relationships that
Beautiful.
I don't think I would have seen or experienced just coaching people around. Like it just didn't feel like that's what I was going to get coaching
Yeah.
people around nutrition and lifestyle. And so I just got really fired up about hearing people's stories.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more, like when I came to nurse coaching, I had no idea the things that I needed to heal about myself. Like
Yes.
I knew
Same.
nothing. Like there was terminology getting thrown around like inner child healing. And I'm like, I have no idea what any of this even means. And I had no idea that I needed to do that work. And
Yes.
little by little, it started getting chipped away from me. And I moved from this place of always what ifing everything in my life and always trying to prepare for every single possible scenario
Mm-hmm.
to being able to center myself more in the present and being able to let go of perfectionism.
Mm. Yes.
So in my work now, my favorite and most successful clients, um, they're high achievers.
Mm-hmm.
We're bumping up against feeling unfulfilled, feeling like they have to do it all, feeling like they can't slow down. They are still in survival.
Yes.
They are still in survival. And I know what it's like to not be in survival now. So I am just very called to guide them through that.
Beautiful. And it's so needed. I mean, that's you're describing me 3 years ago, always in survival mode, but all the P's that Brene Brown goes over, perfectionism, people pleaser, right? There's a whole bunch of them. That was me in a nutshell. And, and I'd started some work before I found coaching, but coaching is really what opened me up and allowed me to learn how to work through these multiple layers that tend to show themselves right as you work through some tough stuff. There's another one there waiting for you, but it's hard and it's a beautiful process too. And so having a guide is just so incredibly helpful to work through that stuff because there is peace on the other side. There is calm. There is thriving and not just surviving. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and we've been taught that there are all these rules about how we must live in this society,
Mm.
and again, it removes that humanness. It
Yes.
removes the humanity. It has us bypassing what we are at our core and our
Hmm.
nature and how we're meant to move in this world. I find for myself, the more I slow down, the more invitations I get to slow down even
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm not sure what the end point there gets to be, but it's so fulfilling to get to watch other people
Hmm.
shift out of what they believed to be just who they are. Like people
Yeah.
believe that perfectionism and people pleasing, like that's just who I am.
Oh
And
yeah. I thought I was just the good girl and that's what I was supposed to do.
yeah,
And so when I was doing that, I was doing great and everybody loved me. So it's a self-defeating cycle because the more you feed into it, the worse it gets, the worse you feel, the more you feel like you have to prove and please and help others and you're just draining yourself. It's so hard.
yeah.
Yeah. So if you're, somebody's listening today and they're kind of like, oh crap, they're talking about me and I am unfulfilled and I am not happy and I'm stuck and I don't know even what to do. What would be kind of your initial suggestions for them to kind of start the process, start working through this, start figuring out what's the next step?
Mm. I would say find some support.
Mm-hmm.
Find support to help guide you through it because it's invaluable. I and I only have my own experience to speak from and what I've witnessed in my clients, but it's not that we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's what do we do in those moments when we're not following through? And then there's this story that, well, you don't try hard enough, you're not good enough, you don't have enough willpower. And that's just not the truth.
Right.
Just not the truth. And having that outside support, that person who is 100% on your side to help you weed through what's really real, what's really a story, whose story it may actually be.
Yeah.
Um,
So true.
and and going back and visiting the where those things maybe originate from, giving that version of yourself what you actually needed in that moment that you didn't get.
Yeah.
And those things are just really hard to know how to do on your
Right.
own. And when those inevitable layers get peeled back again, I describe it as we feel like we take one good step forward, and then it's like we take 10 back. And sometimes
Yeah.
it feels like a rubber band even like snaps us back. And like you had hit this stride with that forward step, and then you're like all of a sudden like, what the heck
Just
happened?
happened.
Like,
Yeah.
I thought I dealt with this. Like, why am I here
Yeah.
again? And then again, I think that just perpetuates the idea that, well, I really can't not feel anxious all the time. I really can't not try to control everything. This is just who I am.
Right.
And if you have somebody who's walked the path before you, then they know better how to help you navigate it when you're just starting out.
Yeah. 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 It is tough. It is overwhelming to reach out and ask for help. It's overwhelming to acknowledge that what you're struggling with. But yeah, I mean, I'm certain that if somebody reached out to you, be willing to check in with them for a little bit and chat and help them guide them a bit. I'm the same way. I mean, like I just connecting with people, hearing their story, giving them suggestions to get started, but you can usually only go so far on your own, whether that's with a coach. A therapist is actually is very helpful. I think it's a wonderful partnership for coaching. I think, we obviously learn in our program, the differences between the two, but I think in practice it's beautiful when I can pair therapy, really working on some of that deep past stuff, but with coaching, which is so powerful to move you forward and to shift how create the new version of yourself. And to be able to do that work is beautiful. But I think having support is so critical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that I felt stuck for a really long time.
Hmm.
And I know we don't have to stay stuck. And
True.
and again, when I hired my first coach, like I had no idea where it was leading. I thought I
Yeah.
was hiring somebody to help me know how to start a business.
Yeah.
When I told her that I worried about everything all the time, she said, "We're going to work on that." And to this day, I can't tell you what we did. Like I just know that we just kept coming back to having that space held for me.
Hmm.
And over time, I developed the capacity and the tools.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a really great message for new coaches. I think our first instinct is to get our business all set up, right? All the technical things. But then once you start getting into that, a lot of those self-limiting beliefs start popping up, and those root causes are things that we, usually end up having to pause and work through at some point before we can really move forward in our businesses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, Katie, this has been great. I really appreciate you sharing your journey. I think what's beautiful is that I just love how nursing can be so diverse. Everything from, general nursing to specialties in, surgery and coaching and everything in between. I think you've shown how diverse that is, and the grit and even those survival years were so critical to your success and where you are now. So even I'm sure as hard as they were, there's probably that gratitude that it got you to where you are now as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like, now I finally have the capacity to appreciate that version of myself and
Yeah.
to actually allow her to heal because we didn't do
Mhm.
that for a long time.
Mm-mm.
That's been hard. It's been a hard couple of weeks. I'm not gonna lie. Like
Yeah.
we've really spent some time with that girl.
Yeah, yeah, and that it's not over, right? Like even
No.
like we've talked about those layers, but even when we really think we've done that deep work of loving our previous versions of ourselves, it still creeps back up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any final messages from your heart or any thoughts that you want to share today with our nurses?
Hmm. I would say be gentle with yourself.
Mm,
Um, if you are not taking care of yourself, if you are not prioritizing some time for yourself, carve out even just 5 minutes a day to just be with yourself, and then you have something to build on.
yeah. Yeah. It's so important. Absolutely. Thank you. Where can people find you?
So I am very active on social media, mostly on Facebook. I am on there as Katie Stafford. And so that's where I show up and share a lot about my own story, share a lot about my own growth. So it gives people a really clear picture of where I've been and where I
Ah,
currently am. And then I also have a website, and it's also very simple. It's just my business name, which is catherinestaffordcoaching.com. And people can actually book a free consultation session with me to see
perfect.
if working together would be a great fit. Um, I just love that we get to communicate on
Yeah.
this level with humans in a way that we just didn't get to at the bedside.
Agreed. Agreed. I'm so grateful. And I'll put your contact info in the show notes. Um, thank you again for being here. I really appreciate your time.
This has been incredible. Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome. All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.